And he said, hey, if ever you're bored downstairs, come on up and I'll teach you a little bit about saddlery. And so I went upstairs and I stood at the bench with him and he started me on the journey of leather work, just doing really simple, like how to repair a dog collar, how to relace reins that somebody brings in to be relaced. Simple, simple stuff like that. And it sort of sparked my interest. I've been a horse girl my whole life. I started riding when I was 7. I grew up across the street from Pimlico Racecourse, so I watched Morning Breeze every single day on my way to school. And I just loved ponies. I wanted a pony every morning, would wake up, Christmas every year. I mean, my parents' broken record. I want a pony, I want a pony. Okay, I'll take a puppy, but I would really like a pony every year, right? And finally, when I was 7, they found somebody who would teach little kids to ride and had safe lesson horses. And I started riding and I have not missed a beat since then. Mid-40s, it's been a hot minute. I like what I do. I really am a dressage person. I'm in an eventing barn because I like eventers. I think that they're a little crazy and that matches my crazy, so that works out for me. But truly, I appreciate and have ridden just about every discipline. I have groomed for combined driving teams. I've worked in breeding barns. I've groomed for a 56-horse lesson barn. I've done a little bit of everything. And when I found saddle fitting, I really, truly said, hey, I just want to be able to pay my horse bills. Like, I just want my board off of my personal check every month, and I want this to, like, pay for itself. And it has really taken on a life of its own because I'm a perfectionist. And I really love the combination of science and art. And what that means is that the science of saddle fitting, how the horse moves, the biomechanics of the whole thing, how the rider is positioned and how their body interacts with the horse, that is where the art comes in, right? So I can show you guys, and I'm going to, a bunch of different trees and why they may or may not work for a given horse. And I can show you the world's most healthy-backed horse that's ever existed. Okay, so I have these manufactured because nobody here in the US really makes these anymore. And I took one to my fiberglass guy and I was like, hey, I need you to make a bunch of these for me because nobody makes them anymore and I need a bunch of them. And the first ones that he gave me had such a hollowed out trapezius that I was like, I need you to start over again. I can't in good conscience put this in front of anybody and be like, this is a horse's back. It was bad. So we've fixed it, but it is still not a great example. But the wither on it does sort of keep the amateur person trying to climb onto this who doesn't normally ride horses but comes to a horse show and wants to sit in a saddle from teetering off one side or the other. So it works, but just barely. We are going to talk about our horse friend here who I've never named, and I feel suddenly extremely guilty about that. It turns out I'm a terrible owner. I've never named this particular horse. I do have several at home that are purple. Those also don't have names, but we just call them the purple twins. Yeah, this white one doesn't have a name and I feel bad. So we're gonna talk about saddles and trees and panels because those are the parts that are distinct and individualized to the horse. The rider is a completely other kettle of fish that I can't really get into in a setting like this, right? It's very, very difficult to talk about femur length and how your pelvis is shaped and what your riding ability is in a setting like this without you having to be very, very personal with some new friends that you've just made. Nobody wants to do that, right? So we're going to talk about the side of the saddle that impacts your partner and then understand that there is a side of the saddle that impacts you, and the intersection of those two things is where we find harmony and the most perfect coming together that you possibly can. So I started out as a bench saddler working with my mentor here in America. I figured out that there was almost no opportunity and there were almost no other master saddlers here in the United States, that they've all either aged out and retired or we've lost them. And I decided during COVID that it was time to start on a more formalized journey. So I went back and forth to England a whole lot, going back over there where they have the Society of Master Saddlers who certify and credential master bench saddlers, master retail saddlers, master saddle fitters. And as part of the Master Saddlers program, which is a 7-year apprenticeship, and you go back and forth and you do things like hand stitching on a seat with the welting and the whole 9 yards, which is not something that anybody in production saddlery does anymore, but you have to do it because it's tradition. And being able to stitch 12 stitches to the inch on a hand-stitched bridle, because, again, tradition, and torture of apprentices. And in order to be able to build a saddle, you have to know how it's supposed to go on a horse, which is why they don't sort of let you go off the rails. You have to go and learn something about saddle fitting. And so in that process, I learned to become a saddle fitter. For many years, I recommended a saddle fitter in my area who I thought was very good at her job, and she absolutely was. She was a little bit of a tough character, but she was very, very strong in her advocacy of the horse. Sorry about your luck. I'm sorry that you don't like the way that the seat feels. I'm sorry that it's not your preferred brand. I'm sorry that your trainer says you're gonna disappoint them at the show, whatever. That's not a saddle that fits your horse. This is a saddle that fits your horse. That's what I care about. And when she passed away at the age of 82, while still working, we were sort of left with a lack of a really great saddle fitter to refer to. And so I decided that it was time to go out on my own. The Society of Master Saddlers requires that we have at least 3 brands that we represent. They do not want one brand saddle fitters anywhere within the society, which is great because not every brand makes a saddle that fits every horse, despite what some of them will tell you, and despite what the lore of yesteryear was, which was that every Preda Nations and Steuben Siegfried fit on every horse in the barn. Ask me how I know, right? 56 horses, we had 19 saddles, they were all the same. Not kidding. We did have one Wintec dressage saddle when they first came out. That was revolutionary. Oh my gosh, we can change the gullet. This is absolutely amazing. The horses all hated it. Turns out the air flocked panels were not really popular immediately. And it was also the first grippy stuff that anybody had ever sat in. We didn't have silicone britches back then. This was in the 80s and 90s. And so the Wintec had suede synthetic on it. And I couldn't fall off the horse. I tried. I really couldn't. I was like, hey, you know, trying to yeet myself off of the young horse who's going sideways to the jump. I was like, this is going to be bad. We couldn't get off. So it was sort of the beginning of this huge revolution of multiple brands of saddle, really customizing here in the US what was available. So I picked up 3 brands of saddle. Since then, I have picked up several more brands of saddle and have actually started to manufacture my own saddles because I think that there are some things on the marketplace that weren't being done very well or that were being done very well, but they required exclusivity in their contract with their saddle fitters. So you could only represent that brand if you wanted to make it available to your clients. It was one brand. I've already got 3. I've now got 7. I'm not sending those 7 away to pick up 1, right? I'm just not going to do that. So I started manufacturing my own saddles and now have my own line of saddles. So I'm going to show you guys a bunch of different trees today. I'm going to talk to you guys about the different kinds of panels that are out there. We are going to talk about how that translates into the full saddle when it's all put together. We're going to go through that process. Before I get started, is there anybody that has a burning question they absolutely need me to answer before I show you the guts of a saddle? I'm pro burning questions. Yes, please.
Are you going to cover Western saddles as well?
I'm not. And I will explain very quickly why, but there are no good schools to train you to fit Western saddles. There are lots of people that'll teach you to make a Western saddle, and there are several schools that'll teach you to manufacture a Western saddle tree, but there's very little research and education that goes into it. And so as I am not educated in it, I won't speak on it. Can I tell you whether your Western saddle fits if I'm standing in front of it and the barn? Yes. But that's a biomechanical piece. I can't say, oh, the barrel saddle is better over the roping saddle is better over the, I don't know. This is where that's the limitation. We've hit the end of my knowledge about Western saddles. So truly, it's just not something I'm an expert in and I can't speak to as well as I would like to, so I just stay out of that swimming pool. Okay, so let's talk about, how many of you guys have ever seen a saddle taken apart? Yeah, a couple of you guys. I will tell you that very early on in my saddle fitting career, because I'm a bench saddler, I went out into barns and I did a lot of things that apparently most saddle fitters didn't do. And I had a woman almost pass out when I cut her saddle apart. I thought she was gonna vomit. She looked like I had just canceled Christmas. And I was like, no, this is normal. We do this all the time. So I'm gonna show you the guts of some saddles. No one throw up. All right. So this lovely example right here is a very cheap, poorly made plastic saddle tree. I'm going to pass this around so that you guys can see all of the holes that have been placed into this plastic. These plastic trees, the carbon fiber trees that are out there, the trees that are meant to be very short life are that way on purpose, okay? There are a lot of saddle brand manufacturers that have learned to use the planned obsolescence model, where after 5 years, they will no longer do anything to that saddle for you. They won't fix that saddle anymore. And if you send it in for a repair, it will cost you almost what a new saddle would cost anyway, because they want you to buy another one. That's hard, right? I would like to buy a saddle, invest in it, make it work, be able to change it, make it continue to work for the next horse if I can, or be able to pass it on to the next person when I'm finished with it. That's a difficult thing when the idea is that this is going to start to fall apart at some point. So I'm going to pass this around, and I want you guys to look at all of the holes that have been drilled through it. It has no metal in the head, right? So this is all just hard plastic. Technically, it's recyclable, and when I'm tired of carrying it around with me, it'll go into the recycling bin, and it will become a plastic bag or somebody's water bottle or whatever, right? But it is a full polycarbonate plastic tree. Most of the polycarbonate plastic trees that are out there are there because they are adjustable, which means that they can be flexed. This is not meant to be flexed. This is a very, you guys would recognize the brand name if I said it, but I'm not going to call them to the carpet that way. But this is a non-adjustable polycarbonate tree meant to make a very lightweight, close contact saddle for mostly jumping. So I'm going to pass that around. You guys can take a peek. And then this would be a very traditional jump saddle. This actually has some fairly long forward tree points, right? If I put this down on the horse, what you guys would see is that these tree points angle forward. The problem with that is that the scapula of your horse, their shoulder blade, rocks back when they extend their front legs forward. If they're extending their front legs forward and rocking that scapula back and it runs into the tree point, they are not going to extend their legs as far forward, right? So long tree points and forward tree points have some limitations. If it impinges on your horse's ability to stretch their leg forward, they can't really take a short distance at a fence, right? Because we're all perfect riders and we never ever give them a short spot and it's never a problem and we never misride. We never, if you like taking a long spot, give them a long forward tree point, put that right in the back of their scapula. They'll take a long spot for you all day long. But when I have somebody who says, hey, I've gone up in the fence heights, I'm coming up to the 3-foot line or whatever, and my horse has started knocking rails and taking longer and longer spots, I can almost 100% point to the tree of the saddle. It's almost 100% going to be interfering with the scapula. So when you guys get home, I would encourage you guys to go and have someone pull your pony's leg forward like you're stretching your girth, right? Moving the hair under the girth. Go ahead and pull that front leg forward and draw on your horse in chalk where that scapula rocks back to. Think you'll be surprised how far back it goes. Normally it's 2.5 or 3 inches from where it is when they're standing still. You have to make sure that your tree point stays behind that area. Otherwise, you are going to have a horse who's either very choppy and under their shoulders at any gait. They can't really extend, they can't really sit, they can't really get out in front of themselves, or you're going to have a horse who's just mad all the time. And that is their way of communicating, I'm uncomfortable. You have to figure out where they're uncomfortable. If you're curious about where your tree points are, it's under all of these pins in your saddle, right? Your tree point comes down, even on a monoflap, all of these metal pieces go down and through the wood or plastic of your tree. So this is the line of your tree point in every saddle. So go home and look at the configuration of where your pins are in your saddle so that you know exactly where your tree is sitting. Now, on a dual flap saddle, you can lift up the flap and see the pocket that the tree is sitting into. But not on every saddle. Mono flaps make it a little bit harder. Right? There's your tree point into that pocket. Okay? Tree point into the pocket. Right? That's how you know how long it is and what angle it's going at. So you would look at this and I would go, oh, this is a pretty straight up and down to the ground, not forward into their shoulder, not back away from their shoulder, tree point. Now, I don't know about you, but my horse, a little bit of a lazy reader, not reading saddle fitting books on the weekends. I've tried, he just won't. That's great. He's gonna have an opinion. So I can walk into the barn and I can go, oh, this saddle fits your horse beautifully. Everything about it is perfect. It meets all the clearances. Everything's good to go. And the horse hates it. Okay. Let's try to figure out what it is that the horse dislikes about it and let's work backwards from there, which is how I ended up with 7 brands. Because sometimes I get to the end of the options in a brand and I go, we're so close, but we're not there yet. I need this weird thing. And that configuration exists in a different brand. Okay, great. Let me call Germany and get them to send me a blah, blah, blah so that we can go from there. So the next thing that I'm going to hand you guys is a really wide head, very flat rails down through here. So flat rails, big muscled back. Think warm blood, right? The other thing that's really unique about this tree is that the bottom of the tree point is metal. It's meant to have 2 pieces of leather that come down over the end to make it flexible. But this is a very short tree point. Look how much there is underneath the stirrup bar. There's almost nothing, right? Compared to the tree we looked at before, where I've got almost 1.5 inches below where the stirrup bar comes in, this is really, really short. It's also really, really flat. Whereas this one, the rails are here, right, in the middle, underneath your leg. This one is very angled here, meant for a proud spinal process. Your horse's vertebrae sticks up above the muscles of their back. Think thoroughbred, think some Arabians, think, right, proud spine, high rails. Big, wide, muscled back, muscles encapsulating the spine, warm blood-shaped tree, flat rails, okay? So I'm gonna pass these, or I'm gonna start these over here. I'm gonna start that over there. So looking at those, that gives you some of the pieces that make several of the tree distinctions really matter. Now, how many of you guys have heard about a hoop tree? A hoop tree. This is a very popular term right now. It's very of the moment. Look, we've always had hoop trees. This is not new. Nobody came up with this. Nobody was like, hey, I've got a great idea. I'm going to make a new tree. It really isn't anything new under the sun in saddlery. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. You know, we started out riding on just wood on a horse's back with a little bit of felt under it or some deer skin or whatever we could come up with. In the military, we've gotten much fancier now. We can charge you a lot more money. But truth be told, we haven't really reinvented the wheel here. This would be a very classic A-frame tree, right? It's a very classic A-frame tree. The warm blood tree that's circulating over here, and will make its way this way in a minute, is what we would consider a hoop tree. It's much wider in the rails, and it is much broader in the head, okay? The real difference in what we're doing now with hoop trees as opposed to a classic tree or a wide warm blood tree is that now we are making a wider A-frame tree, which is technically what a hoop tree is. So it's big wither, tall spine, wider horse. Now, My 17.3 gelding falls into that category. He's a big dude, he goes in a wide saddle, he needs the space, but all horses' vertebrae are about 3 inches wide. And so truly, from here to here, that's how wide the wings of your horse's backbone is. No one wants to be sitting on that, even if it's encapsulated in muscle, right? So no matter what, you need to be able to get your hand into the gullet of your saddle, right? I should be able to get my fist into the gullet of your saddle. Now, there are saddle fitters out there, and I'm sure some of you guys, because you're interested in this topic and you're here tonight, who are in several very popular Facebook groups that participate in some very large debates about what you should do when you have a young horse. What do you do? Because you're gonna need to buy different saddles for that horse over the span of its growth period. Most of us start our horses between 3 and 4, maybe 5 if they're really a slow grower, but they are not going to close their last growth plate until they're about 7.5. So 7.5 is a long journey with a lot of bodily changes. I don't know if you've ever raised a teenager, but they go, I'm super hungry, and now I'm a little pudgy, and now I'm 17 inches taller, and now I'm super pudgy, and now I'm 17 inches tall, and horses do the same thing. They go, I'm fat, I'm tall, I'm fat, I'm tall, I'm fat, I'm tall, and it's great, right? But what that means for your saddle is that horse is going to go up several sizes. If they get smaller, we're doing something very wrong, okay? They should never be getting smaller during that growth phase. The problem is that a lot of people will say, well, just buy some old junk saddle to ride in for a while. The older the saddle is, the narrower that gullet is. We really didn't have good research back in the 80s, 90s, before that. We didn't have great research to say, oh, hey, this spine's this wide, we shouldn't sit on it. Hey, we shouldn't sit past the 18th thoracic rib because there's no mechanical connection other than the spine to their hips. Things like that have now become very common knowledge were not there. But you don't want to spend $8,000 every 6 months to buy a new saddle for your growing young horse, right? So what do? Well, either you find an adjustable saddle, something that can either be pressed, can have a gullet bar changed out, can have something else adjusted about it that allows your horse to continue to be comfortable as it grows, or every year you go shopping again on the used marketplace and hope to find the right thing. And that's a tough, tough time to have to be a horse owner, right? I tell everybody you're not allowed to buy your horse a non-adjustable fancy saddle until they're 8 or older and doing the work that they're going to be doing hopefully for the rest of their life. Please don't buy your 3-year-old hopeful eventer an $8,000 dressage saddle. Please don't do that unless it's adjustable, and then I don't think you're going to be able to spend $8,000. Good luck. Let me know if you manage to find enough like crocodile leather to put on it to get you to that price point, because you're going to have to bling it out. There's going to have to be like diamonds and crystals and pearls and things on it, which I'm sure someone would do for you if you asked. Okay, so there are trees that are going around. I want to give you guys one more piece of how all of this works. So, and I'm going to give you guys a break to come and touch everything at any given point. Okay. So the saddle trees that are going around all have springs down through here, right? All of the saddle trees that are making the rounds right now are a spring tree, meaning that in the gullet, there are metal rails. Those metal rails go back. All of the metal underneath the tree is that ready to switch sides? Okay. Thank you. Send that to you guys. So the metal underneath reinforces 6 to 7 to 8 layers of 3mm birch wood. The birch wood gets layered with a resin in between each of the layers. The layers then get baked to solidify the glue. The glue then gets dipped. Everything goes into an oven. It gets baked. It comes out. It gets the metal affixed and riveted to it. And then it gets put in a belt sander. And a human being belt sands it into the shape and configuration that they want. There are prescriptions about how to do that. There are ways to do that. But truly, it is a hand-done process. There is not a machine in the world that makes a saddle tree at all, right? They can get it close on a machine, but they can't get it perfect. Then, as the case is with these black ones, it gets a scrim on the outside of it, which is a fabric, basically a mesh cotton, that gets affixed to it, glued to it, and then it gets dipped in paint. And now it is ready to hold the moisture into the wood so that it can become a saddle and stay not brittle for the rest of its life, right? But that spring in the middle, this metal rail down through here, is meant to allow the tree to flex at least a little bit for your horse. Prior to this, and for some manufacturers, they do not use a spring tree. They use what is called a rigid tree. So the wood is structural to the tree, and it gets much heavier metal underneath, and it moves almost not at all. Now, some horses don't care, and some horses are princesses in the pea, and they're like, oh my God, I'm dying, how could you? Right, and we're all going to pay for the mistake that we made in putting the wrong tree on the horse. This is a much heavier tree. I'm gonna let you guys touch it in a minute, but it is very solid and it flexes a lot less. So the other thing that you guys should note about the way that these trees are manufactured is that almost all of them are made layering the wood left. Sorry, I'm going to try not to put that on the microphone. Left and then right and then left and then right back to the cantle. The cantle is actually a solid piece of wood that gets inset into the tree, and then you'll see where it gets drilled, riveted, stapled, glued into the metal that's underneath. So this tree, prior to the cantle going on, could have been a dressage tree, could have been a flat event tree, could have been a racing tree, although very few manufacturers actually use a full wooden tree on the race saddles. Could have been any number of things, right? Could have become almost anything, but in this case, they chose to put a very flat, low profile cantle on, right? And the rest, this is a sort of semi-deep jump saddle. Now, very A-frame, right? Can you guys see the difference in this shape versus this shape in terms of what's happening in the head? This one has a cutback. I love participants. So that cutback does what? Who knows what a cutback does? Shout it out. Wither clearance. If you have a horse with a big, tall wither, I knew that was going to happen. If I've got a horse with a big, tall wither, this allows for the wither to not get pressure from the tree, even if I put it a little too far forward. How many of you guys are hunter riders or recovered hunter rider? Yeah, big Eck, I see. Yeah, that's okay. I don't hold it against you guys. But I put the saddle on the neck and then I put it back to here. Makes me a little bit of a crazy person because that's not where the saddle goes. It's where the saddle stops, sure. The saddle's supposed to sit back here. If I have anything on my tombstone, it's going to be, move your saddle back, right? But this cutback allows for the saddle to sit where it needs to, right? Imagine that my friend here has a scapula that's right here that's going to rock back on both sides and avoid running into this tree point, right? Beautiful cutback saddle. Not cutback creates a shield over, or a cave over the top of the wither. This is dangerous for two reasons. If you have a really high wither and you spend any time at the front of your jump saddle, riding in 2-point, staying in a half seat, there's a really great chance that you're going to pivot on those tree points and rock the back of your saddle around, right? There's also a really good chance that you're gonna push this down onto the wither, because right now I have like an inch and a half, no, I have about an inch of clearance over the wither here. That's it, not a lot. And if that horse loses condition, right, let's say that they ship for 10 hours down from the very cold of Maryland to Aiken to spend a couple of months hanging out, and they lose a couple of pounds on the trailer, we've now lost muscle and fat down through here. Now we're sitting on the wither. And there's nothing I can do, because even if I move this back, we've still got a good chance we're gonna slide up in, right? Questions about those two tree configurations in the front? Okay.
I got a question with the first tree with
the plastic one?
Why are the holes in there?
The plastic one, it has the holes because I took this out of a saddle. So this was where the head nail was. So your head nail is the one that's got the brand on it. So this is the head nail. That is the head nail hole. They go through. It's a long pin. It gets folded over at the back and it gets stapled down to the tree. The one below that is where your fall down D or your fall down staple or your D comes in. That is a non-structural D-ring. Please do not affix your air vest, your breastplate, anything else to it. It will pop right out. It's a cotter pin. It gets split at the back of the tree and stapled down on both sides, but it's very thin metal and it will pop right out. So if you come off in a spectacular fashion, you may not get your air vest to deploy because it comes ripping out of the saddle instead of hitting that canister, right? Very, very dangerous. So don't use your fall down staples. Either get a D-saver that goes onto your stirrup bar, or get a saddler to give you extra D-rings that are riveted into your tree so that you can put your breastplate and your air vest on them, okay? Easy to have us do that. We're happy to do it. I would much rather everything actually deploy the way it's supposed to. Okay, so looking at the back of these two saddles, right under here, under the cantle, what can you guys tell me about those two different saddles? Yeah. This has a whole bunch of arch at the back, right? Does this one have any arch? So what kind of back do you think this one goes on? Big, wide, flat, right? Think warm blood, think tabletop. They found me. It's the only thing I could come up with. All right. So this one, big, wide, flat back, not gonna have a proud spine, right? This one, proud spine, okay? That can make a huge difference. Now I would like just for a moment for you to think about the front of this tree. Oops, sorry. Sorry, Jen, I'm just throwing things at you. This is really wide and low. And the tree points are short. What kind of horse is that supposed to go on? One with no withers. What is this? Where did that horse's back come from if this is the front of that animal? Please explain to me how we glued two different horses together in the middle. I'm confused, right? But this is why it has never had a saddle made on it, right? I buy a lot of people's retired workshops and I pull things out, and this was clearly an experiment that someone put together for some weird hand-drawn crazy configure. This horse should not exist. This is not okay. Nothing about this is okay. Oh, right, or no one should ride it even if it exists. I love that about you, and I'm sorry. But this is big, wide, no withers, big shoulders, big, tall spine in the back. flat rails, which means no spinal height through here, I can't make any sense of that, right? But it's a great example for you guys to be able to see these two things don't go together. This horse, this guy, needs this front, right? This is that front of that horse. I should just take a bandsaw and glue these together the other way. That would make so much more sense. But this one also has a nice wide, high channel in the back that allows for the spinal clearance, right? So to look at that differently, stay. I stopped at Harbor Freight on my way over here. I'm so proud of myself. Can you guys see that you've got a little bit of clearance back there? I'm going to flip it around for you, don't worry. Little bit of a bump, right?
Is that enough clearance in the back?
Well, so the tree has to be the matching shape of the horse, but really your clearance comes from your panels. So as long as this complies to the shape of the animal, the actual clearance that you get will come from whatever your paneling configuration is. And we'll talk about panels in 1 second because I have some that are pretty cool to look at. Right? So going back to this guy, I'm on the wither. What? Who? Right? What? Yeah. Yeah. Like I can't. I don't know. No, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. Okay, so those are saddle trees. There are 5 major manufacturers that make saddle trees. That's it. There are several companies that make their own saddle trees. Ideal makes their own. They make them for Frank Baines, Adam Ellis, Iconic, Lariat, who all of the plain wood trees that are over there in the pile. Lariat makes all of them for Bliss, Devaku, CWD, Butte, Voltaire, Antares, Childeric, HDR, etc. Albion makes their own. I have a small manufacturer that makes my saddle trees. It's 2 guys that left the other big factories and they make their own trees. This is nice wide rails, thoroughbred shaped tree, right? That is the dressage tree that goes in my saddles. But I went and I manufactured this tree, right? I went to them and I was like, hey, I need this, this, and this. And I had them design a tree for me, which I don't expect all saddle fitters to be able to do, right? But I do expect all saddle fitters to know their brand of saddle well enough to order you the right saddle. I expect that they know their line of saddles or the lines of saddles that they carry enough to actually get you the right saddle. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. Read the internet. Okay. Yeah, ask a question.
That mean essentially the only differences in those companies offering are in the panel, so leathers does. So, and how many different types of trees do they make?
I mean, Lariat themselves make hundreds of different configurations of tree for all of the brands that are out there in the world. Most of the brands that use them only use 2 or 3 different trees. But they make, like Bliss, for example, has all of their trees manufactured by them. She has 7 different trees. Okay, so once you begin the process of actually making a saddle, you take seat belt webbing and you run it from the front of the pommel to the back of the cantle. You staple it in, front and back, side and side, and then you go across with the actual seatbelt webbing. So this guy has started to fall apart from my apprenticeship. I can show you guys here that the seatbelt webbing gets stapled into the wood of the tree, and you guys can pass this around and smush it and feel it, but gets stapled into the wood of the tree all the way back, okay? And then we glue in the most well-ventilated area I can find, because I can't afford to lose any more brain cells. I'm a horseback rider. I then glue the foam down. In some cases, we glue what's called a belly on. So this is a rubber belly. These are generally found in jump saddles, and they go right here to make the seat pan feel a little bit wider without making the twist feel wide, right? Gives you a little bit more cushion, a little bit more spring under your seat bones. So you'll see a lot of people that are like, oh my God, I love the seat of this saddle. Yeah, this is why. These two little weirdo things right here, this is the magic. Like, look, when I found this out, I was like, really? That's it? No, for reals, that's it, right? Because basically everything else is the same. So the foam that goes on top of this is a very dense foam. The other thing that happens to the saddle in that piece of putting the webbing through is that we put a plate in front of the cantle, which actually gives you your cantle depth, right? These crazy things get punched out of plastic. It's just plastizote. Goes and just lays right there, gets heat treated so that it complies up against the cantle. This is actually what determines your seat depth. This cheap little 30-cent piece of plastic, right? So from there, we hand shape this. There is nowhere in the world where anybody puts this into a machine and runs it through, because each individual saddle is a little bit different. So when you get a saddle and you're like, ooh, this demo is amazing, I, for one, will happily sell you that demo. Because unless I physically hand make every single saddle, I can't promise you the next one's gonna feel exactly the same, right? I would love to, and I think a lot of my brands do a really, really good job. Can I promise you that they're all gonna be exactly the same? No, this is a human process. And so let's say somebody was in the middle of shaping this seat, shaving all of this down and rasping it into perfect compliance, and they got a phone call. And they step away and somebody else comes in and they pick up the rasping to finish this so I can go to the production line. Do you think it's gonna be exactly the same as the last one that went through the line that day? Maybe not, right? I would love to tell you that they're all gonna be perfect. They may not be. And depending on who's making your saddle and their skill level, there's quite a bit of variability. So the saddle brands that I represent use master saddlers to make their saddles, but there are plenty of brands in the world where it is very much like a car manufacturer or any other, give me one sec, I will get to you. There are many brands that have guys that used to be auto mechanics that can use a drill, who stand on the line, they know the single job that's in front of them, they don't know what else happens on either side of them. They do the one thing that they've been taught to do, which is rivet the stirrup bars on, I rivet the stirrup bars on, I rivet the stirrup bars on, I rivet the stirrup bars on, and then I go home. And I never see the rest of that saddle being made, and I don't have any idea what else happens to it. But if I'm a millimeter or so off, I don't know what that does to anybody, right? So there are lots of factories in the world where they've tried to go with lesser skilled labor, higher production value, and you get a less nice, consistent saddle out of it. Go ahead, what's your question?
What brands do you work with?
So the brands that I carry, I have Albion, I have Bliss of London, Loxley, Cavaletti, I have Passier, I have Burney Brothers of Ireland, I have Defiant, and I have a very small manufacturer called Equitech. So Defiant is my brand, everything else is made by somebody else, but I know them. I've been to their factories, I've been at their benches, I've touched everything, I've seen them do it, I see them do it from start to finish. There are lots of saddle brands that are made, they claim in France and are actually made in Morocco. There are lots of people that are in saddle repair shops, even here in the US, who are perfectly passionate about what they do, but truly most of their job is using a drill to replace panels on a saddle, right? These get drilled on. It's very little lacing involved. They go one screw here, gets affixed to the bottom of the saddle, right? So, hand-shaped, leather gets stretched over, goes to a seamstress, a highly skilled person who actually puts the seat welting in. The seat welting is this line right here that goes around the cantle, right? This line is the intersection between your skirt and your seat leather. Your seat leather gets stretched really taut, should be drum tight so that when you sit on it, gives you a little bit of bounce, right? But that seat welting is generally where seats fail. So the highly skilled person sews through it one time. Because if you sew through it a bunch of times and you perforate the leather, you've just made a perforated line where it's just gonna tear, right? So one time sewing through, putting the 3 different pieces of leather together with the welting, they get it up onto the seat, it gets stapled down underneath, pulled tight, looks like this, right? All of these little relief cuts get pulled and you literally have like, I will stand at the bench with an X-Acto blade, chip, 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 chip. And it's the most terrifying thing because if you screw it up, you got to start all the way over, right? And this is a long process. But I'm going to pass this around for you guys to get a look at. I'll start you guys over here this time. This is a saddle that was made during my apprenticeship. And this is just the seat, right? The flaps then get affixed underneath the skirt. And the very last thing that happens is the panel gets sewn on. So the other thing that I'm going to pass around is that these are foam panels. And I want you guys to think about something with me. These foam panels are meant to be fitted to a singular horse at 8 individual points. This gets divided into 8 segments, and those 8 segments get shaped by hand to that exact specification of that exact shape of that exact horse that one time. The reason that they can get away with having so few tree shapes in some of these brands is because they then go in and basically build the back of the horse in the panel. Foam is a chemical substance. It doesn't last forever. It's not natural. It starts to break down almost immediately. And depending on what it's made out of and how it gets treated, what environment it's in, makes a big difference as to how it holds up. But I'm going to pass these guys around. Again, this came out of somebody's retired workshop. He was a repair guy for a number of brands. He was a master saddler from the UK, lived outside of Chicago. He did a ton of different repairs. And so when I bought his workshop out when he retired, I got a box and a half of panels that are defunct. Either they've been used and replaced, or they were sent to him new and they were the wrong thing. But I want you to run your hands over these as I pass them around, and I want you to feel the variability of how these were made and what the different components of them are. So you'll find some that have a really big bump where a trapezius dip would be, right? Unhealthy back. This horse needs this big old bump right here to fill in where their back muscle is atrophied, okay? You can never hope to build back muscle if you are filling it in with foam. You have to give them the squish. This is really hard. You'd be lifting weights against this all day, every day. It's very hard to do, okay? So I'm gonna hand that one out for you guys to pass around. I'm gonna hand that one out for you guys to pass around. I'm gonna hand that one out for you guys to pass around. Questions about saddle construction? All right, so this piece with the panels gets us to the next very important piece. Who's got, you guys okay? Okay. Makes me nervous when somebody goes, ooh. All right, so this is a Bliss of London Loxley saddle. This is their Fox Hunter model. I love this saddle. This is the saddle that my butt wants to sit in if I'm gonna go like on world's longest trail ride. I love this saddle, and if I could get these 2 pieces this seat and a dressage flap, I would ride in this every day. So, who's got a pocket knife on him? Yeah, may I? Thank you. Nobody cry. It's gonna be fine, I promise. I promise. There's no crying in baseball. I should have specified a sharp pocket knife. You got something sharper, Nat?
Something's going home sharp.
Right?
Is that sharp?
No. And now I can't figure out how to put you away. It's at the back. So, do you have something sharper on you? Oh, yeah. Do you have scissors on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I have the scissors? Less likely to cut my own arm off that way. Multi-tools, man. I spent 25 years in the fire service before I became a saddler. All of us have 4-day on, 4-day off schedules, and I was bored on my 4 days off, which is how I ended up there. Thank you. And quite frankly, that's really great, but I am a bit spoiled. All right, so there is a line of stitching that runs the front and the back of a wool flocked panel and allows me to lace these panels on and off. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So, again, no passing out. People get nervous when I do this. I don't really understand why. It's all just thread.
Because we don't know how to fix it.
I know. And look, my apprentices also get very nervous when I do. They're like, am I gonna have to fix that? No, you're gonna be fine. Come on. So the first time a saddle ever gets taken apart is always the hardest time that the saddle ever gets taken apart, because it got sewn together as it was manufactured. Nat, I might need that again. Sorry. I know you just put it away. All right, so as you guys are looking at those foam flocked panels, what are you guys, questions? What are you thinking? What are you worried about? What do you want to know? Yes. She asked, isn't wool better? Yes, but let me tell you why. Because it isn't just a simple, easy, universal question, right? Wool is better for a couple of reasons. How many of you have horses that as soon as the spring grass comes in, puff up like a tick? Yeah, me too. When your horse does that in a wool flocked saddle, they move the wool where their body needs it. So they can actually reposition the wool in the panel every time their body changes. In the foam, they can't do that. And so you have to be the one paying attention so that you can change the padding that you're using and the shimming that you're using so that you can No, they won't. They genuinely believe, and they've put a lot of money into the research of how the foam does better shock absorbing. And at first, it probably does, right? When it's first made, that's probably true. It's not gonna always be true though, because the foam starts to fall apart at some point. Thank you.
That foam is not gonna be, when you put a brand new saddle on your horse, that foam is not gonna be conformed to that horse, where if you had a wool saddle, you can add and take away to the contour of your horse.
Correct.
So that kind of negates that.
And would they make your saddle last longer? Like,
The wool?
no, the use of the saddle.
But do you mean the wool or the foam? Yes. Yeah, because the other thing I can do is pop these panels off and put new ones on. Or pop these panels off, like I'm so successfully doing in front of everyone right now. Right? Really showing my muster here. So glad I came to Aiken in the winter. Right, when I break a sweat, try to turn the camera off, okay? So when I get a horse really sweaty when they're doing, oh, that's why. She's got screws in this one. Good, good, it's not me. Jesus. It's good, it's going really well. All right, so let's talk about flocking holes. Shifting focus away from the disaster that is Lauren trying to stand here and do this. In your wool flocked saddle, and I'm gonna pass this around for everybody to touch. If you reach up underneath, you can actually feel the hole where the wool flocking is put in. So right in there. The wool flock, when it goes into the saddle, comes off of a Jacob's sheep. Don't ask me why we decided that the Jacob's sheep is the best sheep for this. They have really cool devil horns, 2 up, 2 down. They're adorable. They're black and white, and we get gray wool out of them. They are the best wool unless I have a really heavy rider or a really big moving horse. And in that case, I want something that's a little bit coarser. Right there.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Right? And so you've felt all of this stuff, but you want all of your wool to be very squishy, right? It should be very lofty. Anybody else back here need to touch? So I don't knock this poor woman over as I go by. Take the chair with me. Yeah, go ahead, stick your hand in there.
You can talk about air panels too.
I can, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Sorry. I don't feel it. Where is it? It's so small.
There's a big hole, right?
Yeah.
I've seen Patty
Come forward a little bit.
pull stuff out.
So it's in here.
It's in here.
It's in here. Yep.
I can feel it here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
This
So
whole thing is full of it.
this whole thing is full of wool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And look, if you've ever been a knitter or a spinner or a real homesteading dork like me, or you went to a really hippie school like I did, you've learned about different sheep's wool. When it goes in, it looks like this. And this is lovely and lofty and fantastic to play with, and it's all vaguely aligned in the right direction. And then after your horse sweats in it and you ride in it, it becomes these sort of balls of concrete. So it is a lot more maintenance to have a wool flocked saddle because this needs to be refreshed every couple of years. Okay, it's not nearly as expensive as replacing a foam panel, which can range anywhere from $600 to $1,400 depending on who you're getting to do it. Everything comes out, and often it's a lot worse than this. It's literally little tiny pebbles of concrete by the time it's all felted together. Yeah?
Is it possible to take a saddle that was originally foam panels and make it wool flock?
You can, but you have to completely remake the panels. So you can't take one of these and fill it with wool. It does not have the appropriate depth, right? Side to side comparison. I'm killing it right now. Killing it, right? The gusset depth that you need to get the same kind of support out of the wool, you can't get out of the foam. Out of the foam. The foam is much, much denser, but it's also much more compact. Yes? Yeah, you can absolutely feel it. So if you run your hands down underneath the panels of your saddle and you feel lumps, time to do it. The general rule in the UK is if you ride every day or every other day in all seasons, it's every 2 to 3 years. okay? Every 2 to 3 years. But in the UK, they have a saddle fitting culture and a saddle checking culture. So the British Horse Society says you should have your saddle fitter out every 6 months to just double check that your saddle's still in good shape and that everything is still fitted properly and to be adjusted as needed. And then every couple of years, your saddle fitter will say, hey, your wool's starting to get a little bit gross and it's time to replace it. And when we replace it, we fill it under pressure. Yeah.
Are foam saddles less popular in the UK with the saddle fitting culture of checking wool?
There certainly are sales of the foam saddles, but again, because they carry multiple brands, every single saddle fitter carries multiple brands, just about every one of them has something that's foam flocked in their repertoire. And they certainly have people that prefer them. But the culture really is mostly self-care. It's mostly happy hackers. It's not a huge competition environment. They don't have trainers that own the barns that they ride in. They don't get the sort of marketing influence that we get over here. And so what ends up happening is that they buy whatever's really comfortable for them. And that tends to be a wool flock saddle. Tends to be a little bit more comfortable. So there are certainly people in the UK that have foam flocked saddles, but again, those brands in the UK really have to be willing to change out the panels, which other places in the world they're not willing to do. Okay? Questions for me about saddles for your horse? Yes. So the air panels come in a couple of different configurations. There are only a few brands that use them. There are really 2 big configurations. One is the Bates, Wintec, Arena is the 3 brands that use them primarily. They are a Swiss cheese of air in a matrix inside a panel. And they are, you'll see people on YouTube who like cut them open and they're like, I can't see the air. Well, but that's because you let it out. Like, I don't know what to tell you guys. That's how that works. Like, but truly, like, when you get home tonight, get on YouTube and be like, opening a flare panel. There's no air in there. Okay, guys. Also, please, So there's that. And then there are air bladders that have almost like IV tubing that come out of them that come down into the panels. And those are inflated with a hand pump like you're taking a blood pressure. DK does that, Sue Carson's does that, some of the reactor panel saddles do that, Iconic, Native Pony. And it generally is like a bladder full of air, and you can increase or decrease the density of it. The issue is going to be with any of the air flocked panels, it's not flocking, any of the air panels, is that at some point they're going to spring a leak. Right, that's the nature of a bladder or a balloon, even if it's got a matrix inside of it that operates to hold that up. At some point, they're going to need to be replaced. Now, it's very reasonable to replace them. Bates, Wintec, Arena are happy to sell you new flare panels for like 35 or 40 bucks. It's easy to do. It's simple to change them out. You unscrew them, you screw them back on, you're good to go again. It's great. And they have done a lot of research that says that between the shape of their panels and all of the shims that they sell with all of their saddles, you can customize the fit for your horse. My experience with the matrixed air panels is that they bounce a little bit too much for me. They are a little bit too much like a basketball on the back. That's my personal experience with them. I find them to be a little bit too springy to ride in. I have lots of professionals that love them. They ride in them. They think they're great. I have no problem with that. They like them. Their horses seem to go well. Great. The air bladders almost universally need to be repumped up every couple of rides. So it's a lot of maintenance. And at some point, again, it'll spring a leak somewhere, whether that's in the cord. And it is a bit unsightly because you can see it on the outside of the saddle. But yeah, every couple of rides, you have to pump it back up like you were reinflating an air mattress that you slept on We've all had that experience where you end up in the middle on the ground and then you can't get out. You got to roll like 6 times to the edge. Same idea, but inside your saddle. So they're not particularly popular, although the brands that do them really well, right? There is new research happening all the time about saddle fit. There are entire colleges and universities that have research grants dedicated to figuring out the next best thing in saddle fit. And I welcome them to bring all of that research to the table because I think that's really going to set apart what happens in the next couple of years. But truly, the horse gets the vote, right? I can say there's nothing about this saddle that should fit, that you should like, that you should want to go in, and the horse is like, this is the only saddle I will ever wear. Go away. Take you and your training and your research and get out of my barn aisle, right? Okay. You want to go in this thing that's hugging you super tight around the wither, I wouldn't select it, and we're going to run into some problems potentially. My job as a fitter is to educate their rider and owner about what the next things to watch for are, and can we change it out, right? At some point, are we going to need to make some adjustments? Maybe, right? But certainly, there are horses that pick saddles that empirically don't fit. And they know, this is mine. This is the only one I will allow, and you get out, okay? What I'm always looking for is, does the horse move well in it? And the rest I can get around, right? As long as we're not causing injury to the, injury to the animal, we're not making back muscles worse, we're not creating more atrophy, we're not making anybody sore, whatever that horse wants, right? Where we run into really problematic saddle fitting is when they are a sales rep, they come in, they only know that brand, they are there to sell you something. The only way that they make their money is by selling you something, and then they're never going to come and service your saddle again, right? They've made the sale, they got your check, thanks, see you, bye. They're not coming back to check that it fits. They're gonna ship the saddle directly to you, and then they're never going to come back and see you ever again unless you need another saddle or somebody else in your barn needs a saddle. That's a problem for me, and the difference for me in my business model and the other saddle fitters that I train is that I'm developing a relationship with my client because I got to come back and add wool. I got to come back and be allowed back into that barn to make sure that you're properly balanced, that you're not stuck in your knee block because you're downhill, or you're not fighting for your life sitting behind the motion because your saddle's low in the back, right? That your horse isn't starting to try to buck you off because it's sitting past T18, that 18th thoracic vertebrae where the last rib is, which is the last weight-bearing area. Now look, I have some ponies that have hugely long rib cages that basically touch their hips, and they can take a full 18-inch saddle. And I have some horses that have little teeny tiny rib cages, and they can only have a very tiny saddle despite their big movement and their big everything else. They need a shortened pony panel, right? Cool. I can do all of that stuff. My job is to make sure that the right saddle gets on the right horse for the right amount of money that make that rider and that horse as happy as we possibly can, right? So I personally have saddles that range everywhere from $1,800 to $9,000 on the truck, and I do my very best to stay within whatever the price range is of my client that's there in front of me. I also will come out and work on used saddles. I will also come out and adjust as much as I possibly can any other brand of saddle. I will come out and advise you about what pads to use. Is your horse lopsided? Is your horse running around needing to see the chiropractor or having some sort of injury in their past that makes you feel like you're riding around with a flat rear tire and you can't get your shoulder up, and no matter what you do, you're riding crazy? And if we add a little shim underneath and it puts you even, none of us are symmetrical. Our horses are not symmetrical. They can't possibly be. And then we put a static thing in the middle and we go, fix it all. It's not really how it works. But my job is to come in and make it as good as we possibly can, right? I am happy to take questions for you guys. We're at like 7:45. I'm so grateful for your attention tonight. Yes, ma'am.
What if you are in a position where you have multiple horses to ride for like one owner, but you only have one saddle, and you're trying to fit multiple horses?
So,
And the owner is not going to buy a new saddle per horse.
Can you repeat the question?
I absolutely am happy to repeat the question. So the question was, what do you do when you find yourself in the impossible position of having multiple horses to ride for an owner who only will invest in one saddle that's supposed to fit every horse? And it's really almost impossible. The short answer for me is that we go to the biggest horse and we then pad everybody else. So it's a greater sin to be too small than it is to be too big. And I can adjust shims, find half pads, make things work on too big wide of a saddle than I can on too narrow. There's nothing I can do about too narrow, but I can always add more padding and shims. So that's the worst case scenario. What you're proposing is the worst case scenario. But for me, the conversation with the owner is always, how much performative excellence are you expecting out of these animals, right? You are going to expect this person to run a marathon in Crocs that don't really fit them, even in sport mode. You're not going to get the best running performance out of that runner. If we got them some really great shoes, you gain 30% on the performance of that animal. And when we're talking about, stop, I don't want you doing the math. My watch is volunteering to help me with the statistics. The difference in fractional pieces of points acquired in the ride in competition, or the money earned on the backside on the sale of that horse who now has an auto change because they're comfortable in the saddle that they go in and can now be a child's hunter because it has an auto change and its price tag goes up X number of dollars. The investment in a saddle to make that horse comfortable of $2,000 on the back of a $30,000 price increase on the horse, I will make that argument all day, right? But if I have to pick the battle that I'm going to have, I would go too wide and pad up, fit the biggest horse that we have, and we'll do the best we can with everything else. But it's really, that's the worst case scenario. And certainly we see it, right? That happens. But ideally, we would have at least a couple of different saddles that work for the horses that I can get two that are sort of closely shaped into the right. But you see the variation in the trees, right? There's so much individualized capacity there. You really can get it almost perfect. We can get within a ballpark range and still be in good shape. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Can you talk briefly about padding? You've mentioned several times, and
Yep.
that may be way too broad.
So the short answer is that half pads come in a couple of different configurations. The ones that are the most effective for changing the way a saddle fits involve shims. Those shims can either be XRD foam, like in the Pro Light, or they can be felt. Felt is a more structural, permanent, hard material, does a better job of lifting. The XRD foam does a better job of providing concussion cushion, right? That's sort of the short answer. The best configuration for shimming, in my personal opinion, is I want 3 sections, not 2, not 1. I will tell you that if you need to shim something and you don't have exactly what you need, or it's a weird shape, go to the dollar store and buy a yoga mat and cut it up. Go do that. Just scissors, just go for it. And then hold on to the rest of that yoga mat because someday you'll need it. It will start to disintegrate, right? But you can also go to Joann Fabrics and get many layers of felt, and build yourself shims that way, okay? When you buy a shim pad that either has felt or foam, they normally give you a couple of different thicknesses. The ones that I recommend most often are the Winderin. Winderin has 3 sections. It's all either, it is a 1-panel piece of foam and 3 sections of felt shims that come in 3 different widths. I really like those, and they come in different sizes and shapes with different thicknesses of foam. The Pro Light, which is the Fairfax Kenton Masters line of saddle pad, but it's very easy to find around in the world. Bliss makes one that's exactly the same. Cavaletti makes one that's exactly the same. It's just got a different name on the spine. And then ECP makes one that is also, but very hard to find here in the United States. I don't know why. Yeah. Aiken Tack Exchange, y'all. There you go. Oh, really? Ah, see, I don't shop Amazon often enough for saddle stuff. There you go. So yeah, that's sort of the 30,000 foot view of padding. Yeah, absolutely. One second. There was somebody else over here. Yes. And then I'll get to you in the back.
Do you have any resources if you're trying to find a saddle brand that meets the like master saddlery qualifications that you mentioned, where it's built by a master saddler? Because I found a master saddler fitter, but like I'm anti-foam, but beyond that, it's like there's a billion options.
Yes.
And how do you kind of narrow it? Like I've done so much research and I still feel like I don't know what I want.
So the Society of Master Saddlers website lists all of the master saddlers that are there and in general who they work for. So that would be the big search to go and do. But also ask. Like when you contact a sales rep or a fitter, ask how many brands they carry, ask what their training is, ask who they trained with. Bates, Wintec, and Arena train their own MSA, Master Saddlers Association trainers. County has their own master saddle fitters. They are only educated about County. Several of the brands do that. Schlese has Saddle Fit for Life. They train their own saddle fitters. They claim they're independent, but he talks a lot about some of the stuff that he does. Tad Coffins also talks a lot about a lot of the stuff that he does. So they will claim that they are independently trained, but ask. And if they don't carry more than one brand, they're probably not really independent. Does that make sense? And then I'll come over here and then we'll come back. Yes?
So I've had this happen in an instance when you talk about the weight bearing.
Surface, yep.
You know, where that's supposed to stop. So I've had someone tell me that the back of the saddle is where that is. And then I've had someone say that the weight bearing portion ends, like of my specific saddle, ends about 2 inches forward of that point of the saddle. Is that an accurate thing? Is someone I'm
I gotcha. Yeah. So let me, this is what we would consider a short, extra deep panel, okay? So it's a deep gusset and it is at the end of where the seat is, right? If you think about some of the brands out there in the world, the panels stick out proud of where the weight-bearing area of the seat ends, right? Your saddle needs to stop making contact with the back at where the panel ends at T18. At the 18th thoracic rib. Correct, where it makes contact. So look, if you've got upswept panels at the back, Steuben does this a lot, Passier does some of it, some of the other brands, where the actual, instead of being a nice square at the bottom like this, it follows the contour up. You're talking about where it actually stops making contact with the back. Correct. And as long as it's not rocking back all the way up that panel, you're in good shape. You're welcome. Okay.
So really it's basically the same question as T18.
Yeah.
I happen to have a thoroughbred who's sort of 16'2", long-legged, but pretty short back.
Yeah.
He's compact, and I did ride a size 16 saddle.
Yep.
So, anyhow, so it was basically my question, like, if you're in a half seat, weight is distributed differently than if you're in a dressage seat, just for example.
It is, but your horse is a suspension bridge. So sitting past that 18th thoracic rib, even if it's just at the walk at the beginning of your ride, puts pressure in the soft tissue that connects to their stifles and their hocks. And you shorten the ability of them to extend their back leg underneath themselves because you're adding pressure onto the top of those pulleys that run everything back down the legs.
So shorter, so what would be some of the like diagnostics? I've just looked up some pictures and nothing's, there's like 15 ribs and they're not labeled and it says 18 ribs, so I don't even know where to find it to sort of understand. And then what are the diagnostics? Like the horse overtracts, like a foot at the frig walk.
Beautiful.
But his trot can get real tight, his canter can get kind of sketchy, may or may not be saddle related, but horses have different length of back.
Of course.
Right.
So the way that you find T18 is you go to their flank where their hair changes directions and you palpate in their side until you hit the back of their rib. And then you run it up to the top of their spine. So it would be, hair change, I'm feeling, I run into that back rib and I run it up to their spine. I'm literally palpating my horse's back and I'm going up. It is along the rib, and some horses come way forward on that 18th rib, and some horses come straight up. So you'll literally be feeling the back of that bone on your own horse's configuration. Yep. It's going to be very individualized. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a flat back, warm blood.
Yep.
But the French saddles I have are more of a C and they rock. So what I've done, well, I don't know if it's right or wrong, is put a half pad in there with felt in the back. Am I actually pushing it into their withers then?
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. So if you have a curvy horse, right, you need a banana-shaped saddle tree, right? If you have a flat horse, you need a very flat tree. And the way that you know is look at the line where your skirt and your facing, which is this stuff below it, come. And when you pop it up on your horse, does the facing and everything head to the rafters or does it head straight out over the butt of the horse? That's how you know whether you have a curvy tree or you have a flat tree, right? You're literally looking at this line right here when you put it on the horse. And if this is shooting for the stars, that's a curvy tree. And the panel underneath can compensate for that. But if you have something that's got a really banana-shaped tree, you need a shim in the front and the back. And really, what we're looking for here, guys, is compliance with the panel. So let me give you this as an example because it has an independent panel on it, meaning it's not affixed. Okay. Panel, right? When I put this on a horse, the very first thing I'm going to do is feel down underneath the tree point for actual contact and no pinch points, right? So I'm taking my hand and I'm running it down from the top of the pommel down under my tree points where my pins are. Can everybody see now? Down under my tree points where my pins are. So I'm feeling for, is it too tight with no girth on, no pad underneath, anything. If I can run my hand easily down underneath the tree point, we've got a good start. Then I'm feeling for T18 back here. I'm running it up and I'm making sure that the saddle sits in front of it. Sticky leather, right? Are we in good shape there? So far, that's 2 for 2. I can keep going. Once I get to that point, I am going to run my hand up and under the panel from the front to the back, feeling for even pressure the whole way. So I want to take my hand and I want to run it all the way underneath and make sure that the stirrup bar isn't digging into my horse this way behind, and that I'm not running into anywhere where I could drive a truck up through the middle of the saddle where it's not making any contact with the back. That's called bridging. I'm sure you guys have all read that on the internet, right? If it's not making contact in here, then it's bridging. I shouldn't be able to drive a truck under your saddle, right? So I'm making sure that it's made full compliant contact all the way to the back of the panel and that it's even pressure the whole way. If I get to a point and I go, ooh, really stuck there, we've got a problem there. And either I'm going to move some flocking or I'm going to adjust the tree size or we're gonna start with a different tree shape, right? If I get to the back and I get to here and there's a lot of pressure back here on the saddle, well, now I know this is where my person sits and we're already tight here. I expect that that horse is gonna have a really sore lumbar and probably a really tight set of hamstrings down the back because that's a lot of pressure right there. Does that make sense to everybody? So you guys all have homework now. You're welcome. Thank your new friend. Go home, feel your saddle. Does it fit? Does it make even contact? Are you actually getting compliance to the back? If you're not, you need to call a saddle fitter. You need to find somebody to help you figure out what to do instead. Yes, ma'am. So 4 fingers put together like this with no girth on top of the wither. The best horse. Right? 4 fingers from the top of the wither to the bottom of the pommel, right over the top of the wither. But you should also be able to feel all the way down into the gullet with your whole hand. With your whole hand while there's no girth on. Now, when you girth it up and you get in the saddle, it's going to sink down some. You should still be able to get a little bit of clearance. You should not be touching the wither anywhere. Correct. No girth, no pads, no weight in it, 4 fingers and a whole hand in. And then with you in the saddle, with pads and a girth and the whole 9 yards, then just enough to get your fingers around. Yes, ma'am.
If I'm looking at a used saddle.
Yes.
How do I tell, like you had the tree that was flatter
Mhm.
and the tree that had more angle? Just looking at the saddle, how can you determine that?
It's almost impossible for the layman to do that. Yeah. I will also say this about used saddle shopping. If they hand you a tracing at the end of your saddle fitting and go buy a medium wide saddle, that's not helpful. I need more information. Even me as a saddle fitter and a saddler, I can take that tracing and I can find you the right tree shape in front. I cannot determine the rest of the back from that tracing. There's nothing else I can do. Used saddle shopping is the most difficult thing to do in the world because look, this is a Cavaletti monoflap jump. Only comes with 1 tree. It's a changeable tree. Only comes with 1 everything. But if I come over here and I pull this Albion K3, it's an adjustable tree. It goes in a press. But I can order this saddle with 5 different trees in it. And nowhere on the stamp do they disclose which tree is in it. That's true for most brands.
And it's not in the serial number.
It is, but you have to get somebody at the factory to tell you which tree they put in it and what it was set to originally. Because what has happened to it since it came off the factory floor and into the barns of the world, who's adjusted it, who's touched it, who's changed it. I can't tell you guys how many saddles I take apart and I find broken trees that were welded by somebody in their workshop out behind the shed. I mean, the abominations of things that get done to saddles and then resold. There is a huge liability piece in buying a used saddle. I mean, and I recommend my clients don't buy if it's not coming from a reputable consignment shop who checks the saddles. Because if they won't take it, you pay fees on eBay anyway, right? You can't sell anything on eBay for free. So if somebody is getting some sort of commission out of the sale, it should be somebody who's actually checked the saddle over. And I see a lot of saddles come in that have been broken, that were said, hey, this tree is broken, you can't ride in the saddle anymore, and they sell it anyway. There's a lot of desperate people that need to get the money out of their saddle to get something better for their horse, and I understand where they're coming from, but that means that there are some very scary saddles out there in the world that should have been thrown in the dumpster or turned into a handbag or literally anything else. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah? Anybody? Yeah. Yes. Oh, good question. I love this. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that more for, a twist is more for the rider, but it must also affect the shape for the horse?
Correct. So I can only do so much with the twist area right in here, right? This is gonna be a narrower twist. This is gonna be a wider twist. There's only so much I can do because the width of this has to accommodate your horse. Now, so that you guys can see over here, this is gonna be a wide twist. This is going to be a slightly narrower twist. However, I can build up the twist on this to make it kinder, if you want a narrow twist, when I manufacture the seat, right? I can put an extra layer of foam and give you a slightly narrower feel through here if that's what you want. But it doesn't change how wide the rest of the saddle has to be. So you are still going to have to work with the horse that you ride. So the horse determines the tree. I can build up your twist and make it narrower, give you better leg hang, right? So you come straighter down if that's what you want, but the tree determines the twist. It has to. Yeah, of course. Now look, there are lots of little tricks, right? I can use 2-inch web instead of 2.5-inch web that goes front to back. I can shave a 1/2 inch that way, make it feel a little bit narrower. I can give a little bit of a 6 mil bump over the twist. Again, makes it feel a little bit narrower. But again, it is determined by your horse. So, okay.
So when you build a saddle like that,
Yes.
I mean, obviously, you're not gonna have all those options when the person sits in the seat to try the saddle. So how do you get to that final determination?
So I'm very fortunate in that I have 7 brands that I know exactly what's going on inside those saddles, and I can pull off the truck and go, hey, you said you really loved riding in customs up until now. Custom generally has a very narrow twist. Oh, you're a county person? County has a very wide twist. I don't know why, that's just the way that they build them, right? So you tell me the favorite thing you've ever ridden in, I can probably tell you what kind of twist you like, and then I'm pulling off of my inventory, and there are 40-something odd saddles in the van, pulling out of my inventory the things that match the thing that you've loved riding in the most, and then we work from there. If I get you in it and I go, wow, you're really overarching your back, you're really trying to sit a certain way, you're really avoiding, I'm gonna switch the twist on you. I'm not gonna tell you about it probably, but I'm gonna go, hey, I just want you to just try this other one just in case. I'm gonna put you in it when you go, oh, this is great. I'm gonna go, you like a wide twist. And also, look, I'm not going to tell you what size seat I put you in because people want to vanity size their saddles like we're at Macy's. What do you mean I'm an 18? I've been a 16 and a half since I was in high school. Sweetheart, you've had 4 kids. I promise you're no longer a 16 and a half. Please ride in a saddle that fits you. Stop it. So we don't talk about seat size. We don't talk about twist until we have to. But truly, that stuff matters a lot to your comfort, your abilities, right? I take a lot of people out of their high school saddles and go, wouldn't you like to be able to feel your body when you get off of the saddle? This is a great idea. Let's just try it a little bit bigger. How much bigger? We don't need to talk about it. Or I'll say, it's in the... They actually offer a narrow and a wide. They make it customized. So I can select whether I want a wide or a narrow twist. But several of their models have a very narrow twist. Several of their models have a wider twist, again, dictated sort of by the tree that's in it. In general, their jump saddles are pretty wide. In general, their dressage saddles are pretty narrow. But again, dependent on the model. Yeah. Any other questions for me, guys? We're, I think, just out of time. We're a couple minutes over. Yeah.
Yeah, I come a little bit more from the Western world.
Yeah.
Do you read sweat patterns at all? When you
No.
build a saddle? No.
No, and here's why. Because you can get either huge amounts of pressure that turn off the sweat follicles in that area, or you can get no contact that gives you no sweat in that area. And so I can't determine from the sweat patterns either on a cloth where the wicking actually spreads it out, or from where the actual back is wet. I can't reliably determine based on sweat patterns. We just don't do it that way because I can also damage those glands in that back if I put enough pressure on them for long enough or abrade them enough where that horse won't sweat in that area anymore either. Look, I have a very sweaty nose. I'm surprised I haven't had to wipe it yet, but I am a very nose sweaty person. Your horse might also just be a really sweaty wither horse, right? We're all a little bit different that way. Now they know a lot about me. Thank you guys. This has really been a pleasure.